Minecraft doesn't feel vanilla anymore. At least, that's what a lot of people will tell you. As the game takes on new features, this sentiment gets more popular. But why? At the end of the day, it is vanilla Minecraft that you're playing. These are official features in the release version of the game. But sometimes these additions can just feel out of place. But why is this? Let's look at the development behind the game. Minecraft started out as one person's project. All of the early choices were consistent, and they would end up being fundamental aspects of the game. There were no checks and balances. Flash forward over 10 years to where we are now, and Mojang has employed over 600 people. That number doesn't represent the amount that are actually focused on development, but even a fraction of it is exponentially higher than what the team started as. Instead of ideas being put straight to code, they have to go through a much more lengthy process, which isn't a bad thing. It's quite necessary for what is now the best-selling video game of all time. But have the inner workings of Mojang resulted in a change of the final product? Surely something has to be responsible for this change that so many people talk about. The opinions about the modern state of the game, especially in relation to its past, only get louder and more prevalent by the day, and most complaints about the features they're adding tend to lead to one comment: "This feels modded," which is very vague. The statement relies on you having not only an extensive knowledge and understanding of the game, but also an insight into that person's experiences with it. And if you ask for any further explanation, the only real answer they can give you is that it just feels that way. And they may not be wrong, especially on a subjective level. But can we explain why people feel this way? It's a tough task to accomplish for sure. The original complaint says so much while giving no real information, and the legs supporting it could be something entirely personal or real tangible changes that have occurred in and around the game. So let's start by focusing on some feelings that may constitute these opinions. We're going to highlight keywords here, and for the subjective side of the argument, 2 of them. Let's discuss Minecraft and nostalgia. Nostalgia is inseparable from Minecraft. You could make an entire documentary on one person's relationship with the game. If you're watching this video, it's likely you have a great deal of memories with the game as well. Personally, I've spent over 10 years, half my life, playing Minecraft. It's grown up with us, especially my demographic that got into the game shortly before or after the official release. But for some people, it's grown a bit too fast. So, many decide to put a stop to its growth and live in its past. Whether it's out of preference or just reminiscing, there's communities of people who derive comfort from older versions of the game. So for them, the modern game can feel very different, almost as if it's entirely separate. And of course it does. There's over 10 years of updates that they didn't witness. Someone who primarily plays beta or alpha would see the pillagers and be missing a decade's worth of context to justify their inclusion. Sometimes the difference isn't even that severe. What if someone who quit playing in release 1.12 in 2017 saw the 1.19 update with the Deep Dark and the Warden? That introduces entire new game mechanics of noise detection and stealth, in a game that just one update before had nothing like that. However, there's definitely cases in which those who have kept up with the game, update to update, feel the same sentiment. I've attributed this to a difference in taste. There are so many ways to play Minecraft. Its staying power comes from how much is on offer to several different demographics. However, these groups aren't always given equal treatment by Mojang. Let's look at 4 of the largest groups to play Minecraft. There's those who enjoy building, those who find comfort in exploring the world, those who have a firm grasp over Redstone and its mechanics, and lastly, those who study and practice the game's combat. These are all groups who are catered to on incredibly varied levels. Builders and explorers have gotten the most love recently, as most newer and larger feature additions have been new blocks and biomes. Redstone technicians are left a bit more in the dark, as they try to find new ways to use mechanics that have been left in the game, while picking up a new playing card every couple of years. The last group, on the other hand, has practically been abandoned by Mojang. Combat has changed drastically, and if you ask most, for the worse after the Java 1.9 update. By completely overhauling the combat system and even the base mechanics of every tool and weapon in the game, an entire subsection of the community has been left in the dark. This is why several minigame servers, like Hypixel, have a wide range of version support, starting at 1.8 and ending with the latest 1.19. All of this to say that depending on where your tastes and preferences lie with the game, your perception of vanilla Minecraft can change. Additions outside of your niche can just feel alien. There are undoubtedly concrete changes that are quantifiable and tangible though. Let's start with the game's design and art. Most people know that Minecraft has gone through a lengthy and all-encompassing texture overhaul. This was from the new art director at Minecraft, Jappa. To be clear, I think Jappa has done a fantastic job at reinterpreting the textures of the game to not only feel more consistent, but more modern and polished. That being said, a large portion of the fandom does not agree with this sentiment, and would rather play the game as they remember it looking, which is why programmer textures is a built-in option. With the great work aside though, there are some occurrences where design clashes with artistic interpretation. No matter how good the art is, sometimes the original concept behind a texture or model just doesn't fit. Where I notice this issue to be at its worst is with large models, both in their textures and animations. I always compare larger mobs to the Ghast. If you've never noticed, the Ghast does not have a consistent pixel size with other textures in the game, and while that sounds like a bad thing, I think it actually lends to it feeling more fitting. I think the Elder Guardian also uses this size correctly. A spot where I think pixel sizing fails is with the Ravager. Its model is entirely pixel consistent with the rest of the world, despite its size, which I think makes it look strangely inconsistent. The texture of larger models in this game never tend to scale 1-to-1 with their size, so when they do, it can feel a bit odd. I did a quick mock-up of downscaling the texture to 50% of what it is, and while there are some things that didn't translate perfectly, I think this is more in line with what most expect. Also, this is more of an opinionated statement, but I think at a conceptual level, the design of the Ravager is very different from most other things in Minecraft. And of course, it's great for the game to try something new, but this is just one of those things that's always stuck out to me. A large part of the draw of early Minecraft was the atmosphere that the game presented. Prior to villages, there was no other intelligent life in this near infinite world. Even then, villagers didn't get intelligent function until they were given trading mechanics in later versions. And before the update that introduced villages, there were no structures other than dungeons, which weren't very robust. But as the world gets livelier and busier, there are more functions occurring at any given time without your input. Some people don't mind this, and some prefer it. But it does go against the game that many people grew familiar with. With all that being said, I think there's one generated structure that goes a bit far. And it's the igloo. What is the one feature that the igloo has that not a single other structure in the game has? A sign. Sure, there may not be words on it, but they're still writing, and that's always seemed a little odd. It stands as a very obvious tutorial. And not to mention, it also marks the only use of one of the few means for intelligent communication in the game's world. So many people are familiar with a lonely Minecraft. So I feel like having something in the world that so directly communicates with the player can feel conflicting to them. The team at Mojang has made a couple of design trends pretty clear. They've been upfront about their one block at a time tradition, but another that goes unspoken is their approach to feature purpose. Now, to be clear, I don't believe this is something that they've said outright. However, there's been a pretty consistent pattern. Each feature that they add to Minecraft tends to have its own distinct purpose and its own interactions with other established mechanics. And there are a couple of features that don't abide by this. I consider mob reskins to be the worst offenders. Think of the Husk, the Drowned, the Stray, the Cave Spider, the Wither Skeleton, Mushrooms, Magma Cubes. There's quite a few, but I feel like most of them have earned their distinction. The Wither Skeleton ties into one of the main bosses in the game, which also serves as a method for progression. The Mushroom and its variant offer unique farming opportunities to the player, and they're also the only inhabitants of the rarest biome in the game. The drowned came with tridents, and originally dropped gold, and on the topic of avoiding redundancy, they changed this drop, likely since gold was already renewable, giving it copper instead. Most of the reskins offer something new, and if they don't, it's likely because their inclusion and features have been grandfathered in from earlier versions. But the Stray and the Husk. Both are considerably measly additions that only offer biome variants to two of the most common enemies in the game. Besides inflicting a couple of status effects, they don't offer anything really unique to the player. The Stray offers one different drop, Arrows of Slowness, but only if killed by a player. And in conjunction with a lack of stray spawners, they're not exactly easy to farm. And this may be another opinionated statement, but I believe they're among the most forgettable mobs in the game. With all that being said, please keep in mind that all of these sections are only patterns that I've recognized. They're not objective or official. But I think they provide a great metric to break down people's opinions of the game. And with those in consideration, I feel there's one feature among the rest that defies everything. A feature that feels so out of place, and until now I couldn't quite quantify it. But now I can confidently say that the most out of place feature in the entire game is the wither painting. For the keywords I've chosen, I find that this painting violates all consistent patterns in the game's development. For a somewhat brief explanation of each of these, nostalgia is obviously affected by this, as this is a newer addition to a mechanic, paintings, that have been in the game since pre-release. It is in fact the only painting to have been added after the initial rollout. Attempting to utilize this painting reveals its lack of use regardless of taste. Paintings in the game are supposed to be purely decorative and to serve as useful accents in many situations. This is the only painting to be incredibly situational, and unless one's constructing a wither-themed area of their world, it doesn't serve much of a purpose. Even then, it's not a painting of the wither, it's a painting of how to make it. But wrapping back around, its purpose. This painting serves as a contrived, unnatural tutorial, which isn't to say that Minecraft shouldn't give the player more info, the game definitely should. There is very little in the way of advice on how to progress, especially without advancements and their descriptions. One of the main hurdles of this problem was the Nether portal. Sure, most people know how to construct one, but what if they didn't? They just had to look it up. The solution to this was ruined portals, a naturally occurring part of your world that doesn't even give you all the answers. They just hint at the solution. There isn't a painting that randomly occurs in the game while you're trying to decorate your home that outlines the construction of another portal, because that's just not the place for it. Even then, the painting doesn't even do a great job at telling the player what to do. Sure, the Wither Skull connection can be made, but past that, it's 4 brown blocks on grass, but like also in the Nether. It's hard to tell, which means it doesn't serve as a good tutorial. Its only reason for inclusion in the game is a lack of information that its presence fails to provide. Not to mention that being a very clear attempt at a tutorial also heavily affects the atmosphere of the game. All of the other paintings are almost mysterious. Who painted these, and for what purpose? Is it implied that the player painted these? What are these designs? Why is this skull on fire? They're perfect devices for adding mystery and intrigue to the game's world, which worked especially well while it was still much more lonely and eerie. But this painting forsakes all of that established implied storytelling. It's not cool or interesting. It's just a structure that can and likely will be built in the game, in a pool of legitimate pieces of art, which, speaking of, design and art is the last keyword we have to cover. Look at all of the paintings. It's not hard to tell which one is out of place here, is it? Again, it's the only painting to have been added after the first run, which, if not evident from its wildly different art, shows in the concept of its design. The paintings were purely aesthetic, and almost felt disconnected from everything else occurring in the Minecraft world, and that's what made them intriguing. When people say Minecraft doesn't feel vanilla to them anymore, or it doesn't feel like Minecraft, or even these new updates are ruining everything, I think of the Wither painting. I love this game. I think most of the new features are incredibly cool. I've been an active player for over a decade now, and I don't see myself stopping anytime soon. But no game is perfect, especially one that's had such a long and rocky development. There's bound to be missteps. And while I don't agree with people who say that the game will never be good again, I can relate that frustration to the Wither painting. It's just not good. It's the only objectively bad Minecraft feature that I can think of, which I guess in turn is a matter of opinion. There's a few points that need to be garnered and learned from this painting. Minecraft is in dire need of more natural assistance on its long progression path. If someone doesn't have prior and/or external knowledge, there's no way that they'd reach the end of the game. Ruined portals were a great step to making this happen. Minecraft has a very unique and stunning visual style and atmosphere that I think need to be maintained. Now, of course, they can grow and change and evolve, but it just needs to be a bit more consistent at times. And this painting isn't without saving. Massive texture reworks have happened and turned out great. I think reimagining this painting to a more stylistic interpretation, akin to Zetterstrand's previous work on the game, would be great. So, if you ever happen to feel that something in the game is out of place, just give it a bit more grace. There's a lot of factors going into it at all times, and it's okay if everything isn't exactly perfect on the first try.